Hey everybody, Bobby D here again, and hey, thanks for checking back in. So today, we're gonna cut right to the chase. I'm gonna try to keep this video short, sweet, and kind of to the point for you. So I've got back here a Gen 10, or at least I believe it's a Gen 10. That's what they're called. Maybe you can chime in the comments and correct me if I'm wrong. But what it is a 2023 ZX6r. And as the title says, we're gonna put a steering damper on this bike. So the Gen 10 2022-2023 ZX-R is void of a steering damper. Not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm going to explain a little bit about what a steering damper does and why you want one on the bike. So I believe Kawasaki stopped putting the steering dampers on their bike right around 2012. And that kind of coincides with when the 600 class of motorcycles really weren't being supported in race classes anymore. The class structures were changing, so the steering dampers were really kind of initiated and put in place as track use and racing and everything of these bikes really got ramped up a couple decades ago. So normally you'll find a steering damper mounted on these bikes. The factory ones are typically mounted down here where you can't see them. The leader bikes, the ZX10s, you see them mounted across the top of the triple clamp right here. So what is the purpose of a steering damper? Well, the forks on these bikes they're very steep. And what that does, it allows this bike to corner left and right, flick side to side a little bit quicker than what you would get with a sport touring bike. The compromise by having it set up like that is the bike can get twitchy. And there's different kinds of wrecks and crashes and things that can happen because of the physics of the motorcycle. But to just kind of cut to the chase, what will happen is sometimes because of the angle, the front end of this bike, and the power that they put out, you'll get a wobble in the front end. It's really prevalent with the higher horsepower bikes, but these 636s and a lot of the newer 600s are definitely putting out enough power these days, and the suspension angles really can cause this still to happen. So the steering damper, as the term says, it dampens that wobble that happens. It helps control it just enough for you to recuperate, from it. Typically, the standard ones that come on bikes, the older ones were not adjustable. They were a fixed rate to just slow that wobble. Most of the aftermarket ones are adjustable, and I'll show you the KRT one we're going to put on the bike. Some of the leader bikes, most of them all, and Suzuki's all actually have an electric one. So it's working through the ECU and the speed sensors, things like that to control how stiff it's going to be. It's active dynamically working. But what we're going to do is put the KRT, or it's the Ohlins kit, on this bike, and that damper is going to mount right across the top here. So let's take a look at the damper kit. So everything you see here, it came in this box. So if you're looking at getting one of these, here is your part number. Well, actually, here's your part number. So everything you want, this is the KRT Ohlins kit. So you've got some instructions in the kit here. You've got the actual damper. Here's the adjustment knob I was talking about, and a couple brackets and a couple bolts. Not too many tools needed. You're going to use some of your existing bolts. It's not a bad idea to have some Loctite and a torque wrench on hand, but other than that, it's a straightforward and really not a time-consuming process to put this thing on. So let's get it mounted. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves a socket wrench with a 5mm Allen. And I like to use an extension for this. It keeps your tools away from your tank so you don't scratch anything. And we're going to remove these two bolts right here. We're going to get these bolts removed because we're going to reuse these bolts. So that's the first thing we're going to do here is get these out. I like to get rid of that wrench. It's one less thing for me to damage this tank here. So let's get the first bolt out, second bolt out, and the first bracket we're going to mount right here. And I will put the torque specs here down in the description. So first thing we've got here is this bracket, and this bracket is simply going to go right here. Now, if you had a ram mount right here on your bike, a lot of people do, you're going to need to remove that, and there's some different options if you want to hook your phone or your camera up on here. So we've got this out of here. I got to get my tool. You got this started here. And I'm first going to just get these on And we will put the torque wrench on those in a bit. So let's get these snug. There we go. First bracket installed. Going through our instructions here, the next thing, we've got this done. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to install a plastic collar underneath this regular collar. So we've got our plastic collar right here. So we're going to open this up. We've got our plastic collar. Here's our collar, and it's the same on both sides. And our other part labeled a collar. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this collar underneath the plastic collar here. So just like this. This is how these two parts go. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the steering damper, the plastic collar, the washer, and the steering damper mount all across the top of the bike here. Okay, as we get to stacking these parts together, you are going to need a T40 bit. As I get to looking at the bolts that came with the actual KRT kit, these are a T40. So you're going to need a T40 bit if you want to do this properly. So as our instructions say, we've got our steering damper. The next thing is going to be the plastic collar, the collar, this washer, and what this is going to do is stack up under here, and we're going to take this bolt with the T40, and what we're going to do is we're going to take all this over here, and we're going to get this mounted up right here. So let's get this mounted up. With everything kind of put together here, so the bolt, plastic collar, the metal collars in there, and the washer, we're going to set this up on top of the first mount here. And we've got our T40 here. I'm going to start this by hand. I'm just going to get this going a little bit. Just enough to keep it from flopping around, hitting the tank, causing a scratch or anything. So there's our first bracket and the damper mounted to the bracket. All right, and here is our second bracket that's actually going to mount to the damper right here. You're going to use these two bolts, and this bracket can get a little bit tricky when it comes to mounting it. So what this bracket's going to do is this bracket's going to mount underneath your triple clamp. Underneath here, there's two screws, or holes for these screws, that this bracket goes up underneath here and into these screws. And the last bolt that comes with your kit is actually going to go through here into here. So we want to keep this thing kind of off the bike, but we're going to take and get these two bolts mounted up underneath here. And again, you may choose to remove your upper triple clamp. I'm going to fiddle around, and I'm pretty sure I can get these mounted up just the way it is. The tool that you're going to need for this is the 4mm. Now, we don't have the torque bit like we do up here. Those torque bits are often used as kind of a security measure. These are a high dollar part, and you don't want somebody stealing it. So I'm going to see if I can get this bracket underneath here, line it up, and get one of these started with just my fingers here. There we go. So there's the first one. I'm just going to get this in here enough to get just the little socket underneath there and turn it. You may have to use just a regular L-shaped one, but we're going to turn this. And now you can see the second spot where the other bolt's going to go in there. And I take this bolt, and these do already have red Loctite on them. And let's see if we can get this up and in here. A little bit tricky. There we go. Get that to start. We don't want to scratch up our tank. There we go. So that is, now that's with that getting started, we're going to go get the L-shaped wrench. I think it'll be easier. All right, so we've got the L-shaped Allen wrench with the ball on the end, and we're gonna get this up in here and finish getting this tightened up. And again, we'll put the torque wrench on these at the end, but let's first just get everything mounted in place. This is a little bit of a tight area, but some of these parts are often a little bit of work like this. There we go. And I can see the bracket pulling up, so I know I'm getting it tight. I'm gonna put the tail end of the wrench on it here. Get this tight. Oh, even though these have Loctite on them, you definitely still want to torque these good. So if we get underneath here, you can see what I'm dealing with. And get the cables out of the way. First one tightened up. We can fish everything, fish the wrench through here. Tighten this one up. Same procedure as the first bolt, and I don't know if the camera is picking it up or not, that you can see the bolt going in or that you care to. All right, so we've got that on there. Now, get all this out of the way. Okay, so that's in place. We got our last T40 bolt here, and this is going to go. We're going to loosen up our damper. We're going to mount this last bolt. You want to make sure you get the damper in position straight so you don't cross thread this bolt. So there we go. So that's it. That's everything in place, not torqued yet. And again, I'm going to hit this with the torque wrench and I'll put the torque settings on there. But you can look at the unit here and you can see the adjustability to tighten or loosen right here. And that's that. That is your KRT steering damper kit on a ZX6R. So that was that. That is mounting the KRT Ohlins steering damper kit on the ZX6R. And we could take one last look at the setup here. Nice and clean setup. And I mentioned I was going to talk to you guys about mounting your phone mount once you're covering this bolt hole. So there's some options that you can still get to that. But you can get a M8 ram mount bolt that will go right here, and you can just have your ram mount sticking on the top here, and it doesn't affect the way that this thing operates. This play is meant to be here, so as your steering moves, and hopefully not a wobble anymore, you can actually, the unit can work properly. It's not a bad idea to put a little bit of grease on these balls here. Keep this thing all torqued up. Again, I'm going to show you the torque specs here. Those will be showing you right now. So this is what you want to get everything torqued to. Real simple. When you service your air filter and everything, you're going to have to remove these bolts right here. But yeah, so from here on forward, when this bike is going to get some steering wobble, this damper will help slow that down. The unit's adjustable. The clicker's right here. You can tighten this up and stiffen the steering on it. So there it is, the KRT Ohlins steering damper kit on the Gen 10, at least I think it's a Gen 10, 2023 ZX6R. Thanks for checking back in. Subscribe, follow along. I've got some more parts going on this ZX6R I think you guys might like seeing. So there we have it. Keep it sticky side down.